All right, welcome to my channel. My name is Attorney Carmiece Graves. I practice family law here in the Washington, D.C. area. And at the law office of Carmiece T. Graves, we specialize in family law and estate planning. So today's topic is going to be on the succession planning, estate planning side of the shop. It's not going to be a long video, but it's something that I have noticed over my more than 17 years of practice now when it comes to real property. So let me just give you a background and we're going to get into it. We're going to get into the scenarios where you can actually, your family, your legacy can be lost, meaning property can be gone. Someone can take it. And I'm going to give you some tips so that you can avoid this, protect your family, protect the legacy, and just give you some information that you might not know. Okay, so here's where I intersect with estate planning and succession planning. So if you don't know, we all want you guys to do, some estate planning, which would include ideally a trust. So when you establish your trust, you have to fund the trust, meaning you need to transfer assets into the trust. And typically, just if you didn't know, when you have a trust, the trust it can buy property, it can have bank accounts, pretty much like an LLC. It can do business. But typically when we establish the trust, we have to transfer property you already have in there, and we use a deed. So this really is all about deeds and estate planning. So here's the T on this, guys. So, there's a lot of quick claim deeds that people draft, right? One of the things that I have been surprised to learn is that there's really little checks on what goes on in terms of whether the deed's valid, whether the signatures are authentic, whether you've checked to see whether what's in the deed actually occurred, meaning that in the deed we write. Obviously, I know that my deeds are valid, and as an attorney, I have to say that I drafted it. So, they'll say that this property, was owned by the grantor, and that pursuant to a will, pursuant to whatever, just a transaction, that the property was transferred to another party. It can be notarized and then it's just filed. So here's the scenarios where this can go awry. So typically, what I have seen, and it's not the typical scenario, but it happens a lot, is where there's a person that's not married, doesn't have kids, and didn't do estate planning. Sometimes people can be in the care of a caregiver. Maybe, family has become distant, and this long-term caregiver, the scenarios, all of a sudden the will pops up and this care provider has inherited everything and no one was watching, no one was checking. All of a sudden you didn't know the will existed. Now the will is filed and now they have acquired property. So one of the things is it could be that instance where there is a loved one that needs long-term care and has had this long-term care provider, and you have to watch out for durable powers of attorneys, wills being drafted. These documents can be used to transfer property. Now, the problem with them is that you could not know that these documents have been executed on behalf of your loved ones. So you're going to hear throughout this video, check on your loved ones, adopt a family member. If they don't have kids, become the kids, because one thing that's going to be important is becoming aware of this information as quickly as possible. Okay, we'll talk about what you can do if that happens. Okay, so it could be the caretaker, but we're not going to blame the caretaker. It could be that the person just passed away without a will, and they didn't have any children, and no one was designated to file the probate. So if a loved one of yours passes away, we need to file probate. Any interested party can do it. You just have to care and know. And this is the process where the court now is invited to investigate or have oversight and authority over what this person has and where it's going. So people who pass away still own their property. It can be in limbo, and leaving that property in limbo for a long time is where the vulnerabilities exist. So here's a scenario. There's a scenario where a great uncle passed away, didn't have any kids. No one really knew what was going on with his estate. They didn't do anything. It sat there. No one looked after it. There was nobody wanting it. And what ended up happening is maybe fast forward 10 years down the line, now great niece goes to law school. Great niece now understands real property law and says, wait a minute, let me go back and investigate what's going on, what happened to my great uncle's property. Come to find out, there was an unscrupulous cousin that knew great uncle's scenario, knew that no one was really, looking after great uncle. And all of a sudden, that there was and I'm not going to say this unscrupulous person was suspected to be the person, because they didn't use any real names. The only real name that was on the deed was the grantor, which was the deceased. So great uncle's name was on the deed. The deed transferred it to some person, no real person that they know, and an LLC. And there was a notary that signed off on it. So property goes from uncle, goes to person with not a real name and an LLC, right? And from there, the property later on is then transferred and sold to somebody else. Now, the problem in this scenario, and remember now 10 years has passed, one of the statuses that a person gets, now if I bought the property, here's a caveat, you're going to always want to do that title insurance. This is what the title insurance is for. These are some of the distinctions between the deeds. A general warranty deed means that I can definitely, guarantee that there's no problems with this deed, that everything is good with the deed, all the owners own the problems. And this is why these deeds exist, because this can't happen. Now you have the general warranty deeds, you have your special warranty deeds, right? Where they may carve out, like, I ain't going to, verify everything, but I can verify back to the time I got it, right? And then there's the quick claim deeds, which is the wild, wild west of, listen, you got what I got, and I don't know what I got because I didn't check, okay? So this is the wild, wild west of deeds, and we use them because sometimes you don't need a title insurance check, but sometimes you do. But what can happen in this scenario? Now what? The property's been sold a couple of times. The bad fraudulent actors are non-existent fraudulent entities or entities that have dissolved. So now you'd have to go off and investigate and find these people to try and serve them and sue them. You have to get a real estate attorney and bring a litigation to get a money judgment. You're not going to get the property back because the people who finally bought it and didn't know any, better and paid good value for it, they're going to be able to keep the property. They didn't do anything wrong. So now you're going to need that money. You're going to need a lot of money to litigate to possibly try and get a money judgment. So this, again, is why in our community, we're going to have to look after our loved ones. We're going to have to get in their business. We're going to need to know what's going on. And we're going to have to highly encourage that some decision is made. And at a minimum, if they say, well, I don't care, I ain't doing all that. I ain't going to talk about dying. You know what I mean? They'll be trying to curse me, talk about my death. You know how it is. At least find, respect their wishes. But what you're going to want to do is know that when they pass away, probate must happen. A probate must be filed. That is the greatest protection that you can have to make sure that the property passes accordingly. Okay? And there's not going to be anybody that makes you do it. It can just not happen. Okay. A lot of times people don't need to do it because maybe the property was jointly owned with somebody else and it has that automatic transfer clause. So sometimes they don't do it. But in this instance, if there's not those heirs in place, please know that you're vulnerable. Okay. Another scenario could be property out of state. So now, what if a lot of people hold their business to their chest, right? You got to hold your business close to your chest because you don't want folks to know what you got going on. You don't want the negative juju around you, but somebody needs to know, because if you pass along with the secrets, I mean, there's nothing I can do. For instance, if I went and bought a plot of land in Wyoming, I'm like, okay, I'm going to just buy me some land. I saw one of those IG posts this the other day when the man was off the grid. So maybe I bought some land. I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy me, build me one of them tiny houses for retirement. But I didn't do nothing with it. But I got my land. I got my deed. And it's my business. Without estate planning, nobody knows that property exists, because there's not a central database, right? There's not a central database that you can go and search, put in someone's name and see all the property. I mean, I'm sure with technology, I'm not going to swear that that doesn't exist, but you'd have to really be dedicated to do a diligent search. I'm sure the technology is coming, but as of right now, traditionally, a property could be in another state and you'd have to go to that recorder of deeds. You'd have to know that that property exists and you need a deed. Typically, you're going to need the deed, or you're going to have to an inclination that, okay, she said somewhere in Wyoming, and then where? What city, what county, what town? I mean, you're going to go, Wyoming's a big state. So this is some of the things we're going to have to really make sure that we share and we know where assets are, where portfolios are, they're kept together, because in that instance, someone could take that property in daylight through adverse possession. This is the United States of America. This whole country was founded on adverse possession, which means is as long as you take it. Oh, and it's so crazy when you in law school, when we're in property class, it's a 1L class, and the book starts off with adverse possession, okay? And it was the most interesting concept that I learned. I mean, besides criminal procedure, because you always want to know what the cops can do and the cops can't do. But real property, it starts with adverse possession, telling you that someone can acquire property, meaning if they just muscle up on your property, it's open and notorious, hostile, and there's another term, but it's hostile, meaning that I stepped to your land and I sat here for about 15 years. You saw me sitting here and you didn't do anything. And because you saw me sitting here, you didn't do anything, guess what? It's mine. It's mine. So in my scenario, which I think is absolutely crazy, so that's why squatters, it's the squatters' rights, right? It comes from the legal concept of adverse possession, and that goes way back in the history of this land. And it would kind of make sense because that's how a lot of property here was acquired, through adverse possession, meaning it's open and notorious, meaning that I didn't sneak and hide and do it. You saw me. Like, it is the most gangster move in the world. Like, you see me over here and you didn't do nothing. You didn't do nothing for 15 years. So guess what? I guess you don't want the land and I'll take the land. And that is a valid transfer. You could put in a deed that you've been sitting there, you done developed land, ain't nobody come. So in my instance, where I done passed on, I didn't tell anybody about my future plans, and my death was untimely and unexpected. No one knows about the land. Well, 15 years later, guess what? That property's gone. Who cares? I mean, it could have mineral rights. It could have appreciated, right? Somebody else in my family might have wanted to go live off the grid or build a farmland. It's gone. But that would have been because I didn't have a portfolio together. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't extend my community, to include someone that could help me with my planning, because I don't have kids, because I'm not married. It doesn't mean you don't have the community to help you plan. It just means you have to be intentional about who's going to step in to take on that responsibility. So it just, especially for my people who are not married, you don't have kids, I really think about, take a moment, take some time, but I really want you to think about who's going to take care of your affairs. So those are the key takeaways, I think, that are most important. Knowing that deeds can easily be recorded. People can falsify deeds. The other one, people can falsify wills. I think we talked about that. So watch out for the fake wills, for the fake, estate planning documents. That's why we encourage trust. You can see the Rupert Murdoch situation going on now. There's a big he is suing to try and undo the trust. That is how ironclad a trust is. That this big multimillionaire, now, because things have changed, so I'm not following it closely, but generally this is what I'm surmising, is that he established a trust, and as a result of his divorce, he made an agreement that his kids would inherit when he no longer was running the company. Now, obviously, when he made the trust, he thought that he would maybe lost capacity, probably would be, dead, not thinking that that would be a condition of this lawsuit, right? From all the, false news that Fox had been putting out, damaging in that Dominion, when they were talking about the Dominion polling machines. So major judgments, one of the conditions, you can't be at the helm. Now the trust kicks in, and now his kids would be at the helm much earlier than he thought. And the kids are not all super conservative. So he wants to abandon the trust now. And he's gonna, everybody's saying, we're going to sit back and see, but we're going to really see how ironclad the trust is, that it's going to be a big litigation. And to undo and challenge a trust, you can't just go and change it and disinherit people. He's going to have to show that there's something, at the core of this trust, at the core of this contract that should be invalidated. So we're all sitting back watching to see if these, super high paid attorneys can come up with something to overturn this trust. But if you hear about the Rupert Murdoch trial regarding his estate, that's what it's about, that his kids have a more moderate to liberal moderate viewpoint, and they would change the direction of the news media. And he's like this, I am not dead, but if I was, I'd roll in my grave, and being that I'm standing, we gonna fight about this. So that's what's going on there. So it just goes to show that these estate planning documents are really critical, because property can be lost, gone, stolen, abandoned. Imagine people that aren't close to their loved ones. Grandma passes away. She was in DC. Ain't nobody do nothing. Lost the property in a tax sale. Okay. So there's ways absolutely to lose property. So look out for your loved ones, adopt them, talk to them about, what their intentions are, what their wishes are. Reach out, see if we can get some estate planning done. But if not, at a minimum, please just know what's going on so that we don't lose legacies, because it does happen. So that's all I have for you today. Thanks so much for tuning in to my channel. I'm attorney Carmiece Graves. If you need to, further this discussion, if you have some particular questions, you could post them. If I could figure out how to read the comments, if anybody has any questions now, I'll take a gander at answering them. I don't see any, but what you can do is you can always reach out to me. My information is in the comments, and I will be posting more information as I meditate on something that I think would be of value to you in the community. So thanks so much for tuning in, and enjoy. Talk to you later. Bye.